Hi, I'm Jeremy Wolf with Denoyer.com here in Columbus, Indiana for Act Research's Market Vital Seminar. I had the opportunity to talk with a few of Act Research's experts about various parts of the trucking economy. And here I am with Tim Denoyer once again. You might have seen him recently. He's here to tell us about the freight economy. So, Tim, thanks for hopping on again.
Happy to do it. Good to be with you.
Freight demand, trucking capacity, how's it looking lately?
It's an interesting time in the trucking market. I would say one of the takeaways from our seminar the past couple days here in Indiana is the trucking cycle feels like it's starting to turn. And I don't say that lightly. It's been a long down cycle. We've had a long period of capacity contraction. It has accelerated recently, but freight demand is really the variable that we're watching very closely. There's obviously a lot of concern about the health of the consumer in general, sort of the lack of freight intensity of data centers, and the cautious housing outlook. And so we've got a number of sort of caution signals still with freight demand. We don't think this is an extremely freight generative economy at the moment, but we're pretty constructive that after a few years on the bottom, so to speak, that freight demand can recover at least a little bit this year.
Tell me more about capacity. It sounds like freight demand isn't doing so much better, but the number of trucks hauling loads might be a bit smaller for that shared piece of the pie?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's one of, I think one of the pieces of the research business where we have a bit of a niche is understanding what's happening with private fleets. And of course, they've taken some freight out of the for-hire market in recent years. And as they have begun shrinking, in addition to the for-hire fleets, who have probably been shrinking for about 3 years now we've got the whole industry starting to contract from a capacity perspective. And we're getting close. There's still some number of excess trucks out there when the weather's good. We've certainly proven that when the weather gets rough, as it has in the past couple of months, that capacity can tighten up quite a bit and cause some real strains in the market, which is what we're dealing with. But I think one of the probably least understood generators of for-hire freight demand is probably going to be the contraction on the private fleet side.
Okay, yeah.
If there's the same amount of freight and we have fewer trucks, then that's more loads per truck.
And private fleet capacity is a little bit more invisible than for-hire capacity generally, right?
Yeah, it's tougher to measure for sure. Those companies are generally quite private. Even though many of them are big, publicly traded multinational companies, they don't give a lot of information about their fleets in general. It's hard to estimate, precisely how much they're hauling. But we certainly can look at economy-wide statistics and compare them to for-hire statistics and infer what's happening with private fleets pretty well.
I was hoping to get you to tell me a little bit more about some of the other FMCSA actions. Non-domiciled CDLs, ELP, some of those things.
Yeah, there's a lot. And our friend Tom Albrecht, who presented yesterday, seems to be working pretty closely with the FMCSA and went through a whole bunch of things in addition to what's been pretty widely discussed in the press. There's a lot going on at FMCSA right now. It seems more aggressive than past years, and some of the proposals out there include things like raising the cost of a motor carrier license from $300 to say $2,000 or something like that to try to cut down on fraud. There were proposals to drastically increase the amount of training that drivers will need to get a CDL, to increase CDL requirements, to cut down on a lot of the shadier actors in the industry.
We've heard quite a few stories about shadier actors coming in, especially in the last few years as the freight cycle has been low. How significant do you think that would be to remove those shady actors? Would it change the capacity equation?
I mean, I think it could actually change the inflation equation in the United States, in the goods economy at least. We're mostly a service economy these days, but I do think that there is. I think it's gotten more and more rampant. I think carrier vetting is getting better, but it's very difficult, and there's increasingly sophisticated organized crime rings that are being operated from outside of the country, and when trucks are getting dispatched from Eastern Europe, it's concerning, and that's happening more and more. And to throw out my friend Tom's estimate, I think he said roughly 10% of capacity he thinks is now pretty much focused on cargo theft.
Huge if true.
Massive.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to substantiate these kind of numbers, but I think I don't think he's being too hyperbolic. I think it's a significant piece, and so we do need more enforcement from the FMCSA on these things. We are certainly getting it in some ways from the non-domicile CDL rules. There is the CORCA Act that we talked about yesterday, combating organized retail crime. And if that becomes a law, that could provide the government with some more resources to really fight these organized crime rings.
I'd like to ask you one more question, and that's to look in the future a little bit, read into a crystal ball for what carriers can expect this year. It sounds like capacity will be down and freight demand will be relatively flat.
Yeah, I think you can say slight growth in freight demand, and some contraction on the supply side. We were expecting a few months ago a little bit more contraction on the supply side, given the poor financial condition of the industry. But we've had some news in terms of the EPA regulations for 2027. It does look like those costs are going to go up. I think you just discussed that with my colleague Ken, and so that is driving some purchasing into this year. So that it's we'll reduce capacity, but only about 1% or 2% from an equipment standpoint. The driver question is a bigger one, where these non-domiciled CDLs are going to be removed. I actually think it's going to be a little bit longer time frame than we initially expected, and so it may not become acute quickly, but that's certainly going to add to the capacity contraction.
All right, thank you for talking with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.